I tried everything. I read the books, I followed the accounts, I downloaded the guides. I sat on the floor with my child during meltdowns, kept my voice soft, validated every single feeling, and waited. And waited. And waited. For things to get better. They didn't. In fact, for a long time things got worse. And if you're here right now, something tells me you know exactly what I'm talking about. You didn't come to gentle parenting because you wanted to be a pushover. You came to it because you loved your child deeply and you wanted to do right by them. You wanted to break cycles. You wanted to be the parent you maybe never had. You were trying so hard it physically hurt. But somewhere between the validation phrases and the co-regulation exercises, something went sideways. Your child started pushing harder. The meltdowns got longer. The disrespect crept in quietly at first, then louder. And you started wondering if maybe you were just doing it wrong. Or worse, if gentle parenting itself was the problem. Here's what nobody told me, and here's what changed everything. Before I get into that, I wanted to mention something quickly. There is a program linked in the video description below. Not going to spend a lot of time on it right now because I want to give you real value first. But if you've been struggling with this longer than you'd like to admit, I want you to at least know it exists. Most parents who find it wish they'd found it sooner. Most parents who ignore it keep circling the same exhausting patterns for months, sometimes years. Just something to keep in the back of your mind as we go through this. Now, back to where I was. I remember standing in my kitchen after what felt like the 100th meltdown that week. I had done everything right, or at least what the internet told me was right. I got down to eye level. I named the emotion out loud. I said things like, "I can see you're really frustrated right now." I held the space. I breathed through it, and my child looked me in the eyes and screamed louder. That moment broke something open in me. Not because I was angry, but because I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. It was the kind of tired that settles into your chest when you've been pouring everything you have into something and it's just not working. Do you know that feeling, that heavy, hollow feeling where you start questioning yourself constantly, where you replay conversations in your head at midnight wondering where you went wrong, where you compare yourself to other parents and feel like somehow they got a manual that you never received? That's where I was. And the loneliness of it was the hardest part. Because gentle parenting is supposed to make you feel connected to your child. Instead, I felt further away than ever. And here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud. Gentle parenting, as most people are practicing it right now, is missing something critical. It's not the wrong approach. It's an incomplete one. And incomplete tools in parenting don't just fail to help. They can actually make things harder. Let me explain what I mean. Most parents learn about gentle parenting through social media, short clips, aesthetic reels, a calm mother kneeling beside her child, speaking softly, child nods, moment resolved. It looks beautiful, it looks achievable. But what those clips don't show you is the 6 months of nothing before that breakthrough. They don't show you the nights where that same mother was questioning her sanity. They don't show you the days where she locked herself in the bathroom just to breathe for 90 seconds. The version of gentle parenting that gets shared online is the highlight reel. The version most parents are actually living is something else entirely. What I discovered after going deep into research, working with specialists, and connecting with hundreds of other parents who were experiencing the exact same thing, is that gentle parenting works powerfully when it's built on a foundation that most people never learn. And without that foundation, it's like building a house on sand. It looks right, it feels right at first, and then the whole thing shifts. The missing piece isn't a technique. It's not a phrase you say differently. It's not about being calmer or more patient, because you are already exhausted from trying to be calm. The missing piece is something that happens before the moment of connection, something in how you show up before conflict even begins. Let me paint this for you. Picture two versions of the same day. In both versions, your child refuses to get ready in the morning. Everything is running late. Tension is rising. In the first version, you're already depleted. You haven't slept well. You've been running on survival mode for weeks. You try to stay calm, but you can feel the tightness in your chest. Your voice sounds gentle, but your body is broadcasting stress. Your child picks up on every bit of it. They escalate. You de-escalate. They escalate again. You hold it together until you don't. The morning falls apart and you spend the rest of the day carrying guilt like a backpack made of bricks. In the second version, something internal has shifted. Not the child, not the situation. You. There's a steadiness in you that doesn't come from trying harder or breathing differently in the moment. It comes from something deeper. And because of that steadiness, the same situation plays out differently. Not perfectly, but differently. Your child still struggles, but your response doesn't feed the fire. The connection holds. That's the version nobody teaches you how to reach. And here's what the research shows, because this isn't just anecdotal. When parents operate from a regulated nervous system, children co-regulate naturally. Not because they're told to, not because they're given the right words, but because the human nervous system is wired for attunement. Children are constantly reading the emotional broadcast of their primary caregiver. When that broadcast shifts, their behavior shifts with it. Studies show that parental emotional regulation is one of the strongest predictors of child behavioral outcomes, stronger than any specific technique or approach. This means that all the gentle parenting scripts in the world cannot compensate for a dysregulated parent. And a dysregulated parent is not a bad parent. It's an overwhelmed one. Which is exactly what most of us are. So the first thing I changed was not my approach to my child. It was my relationship with my own overwhelm. And I wanted to be honest with you about how hard that was to face, because when you've been in survival mode long enough, it starts to feel like you're normal. You don't even realize you're dysregulated because you've been that way for so long it just feels like Tuesday. I started looking at the pattern of how I responded in hard moments. Not with judgment, just with honesty. And I saw something I hadn't wanted to see. My child wasn't the source of the chaos. My child was a mirror. They were showing me exactly how much stress I was holding, and they were doing it in the only language available to them. That realization didn't make the hard moments disappear overnight, but it completely reoriented how I approached them. And it started a process that changed our entire family's emotional temperature. Now let me tell you what started happening when that shift took root. Within a few weeks, the meltdowns were still happening, but they were shorter, not because I was doing anything dramatically different in the moment, but because I wasn't unconsciously escalating them anymore. Within a couple of months, my child started coming to me in moments of distress instead of shutting down or exploding. That might sound small to someone who hasn't lived through the alternative. But if you've spent months or years feeling like your child was pulling away from you, feeling like the connection you desperately wanted to build was somehow slipping through your fingers despite everything you were doing, you know that a child choosing to come to you is not small. It is everything. Parents I've spoken with describe the same turning point. One parent told me she went from daily meltdowns lasting over an hour to maybe 2 or 3 a week, all under 15 minutes, within about 6 weeks of making this shift. Another parent said it was the first time in years that bedtime didn't feel like going into battle. Another said her child told her unprompted, "I feel safe with you." She cried for 20 minutes. These are not isolated stories. This is what happens when you stop trying to fix the child and start understanding the dynamic. Now, I'm not saying gentle parenting was wrong. I'm saying the version most people are practicing is a skeleton of what it's actually capable of being. The principles are sound: connection over correction, emotional validation, natural consequences, staying curious instead of reactive. These things work, but they work inside a framework that supports the parent just as much as they support the child. Because here's the truth that parenting culture doesn't say enough. You cannot pour from empty. You've heard that phrase before, but have you actually let it land? You cannot consistently offer the regulated, connected, emotionally present response that gentle parenting requires if you're running on depletion, self-doubt, and isolation. That's not a character flaw, that's physics. And the cruel irony of gentle parenting as it's typically presented is that it asks the most of you in the moments when you have the least to give. That's not a design flaw in the philosophy, that's a gap in the implementation. And filling that gap is what actually moves the needle. If you've been spinning in this cycle trying to be the calm parent, losing it, feeling guilty, trying again, I need you to hear this. You are not failing. You are attempting a sophisticated skill without the full toolkit. And there is a difference between those two things that matters enormously. The program in the description below is the toolkit I wish I'd had at the beginning of this journey. Not going to tell you it's for everyone, because honestly it's not. If you're content with where things are, you probably don't need it. But if you're lying awake at night, replaying hard moments, if you're watching your connection with your child fray at the edges, if you feel like you've tried everything and something is still missing, then what's below this video might be the thing that finally makes the rest click into place. The parents who benefit most are the ones who stop waiting for a sign and just decide they're done staying stuck. Today might be that day. The link is there when you're ready.